Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another week of Crunching Your Growth. And today's guest is a founder who proves that business does not have to be a choice between making money and doing the right thing. Dal Lamagna left Harvard Business School in 1971. He experienced several business failures and then started Tweezerman with just $500. Most entrepreneurs would be proud enough just building into a successful company, but Dal took it a step further, gave 20% of the company to his employees. He helped make Tweezerman part of the early B Corporation movement. And when the company sold in 2005 for $57 million, his employees received $12 million from the sale. So that's not just a great exit. That's a very different philosophy of building. He's also the author of Raising Eyebrows, a book about doing good while doing well. He's invested in films, social justice, peace initiatives. He's even run for political office because he believes business and leadership should be used to make the world better. So today we're going to talk about failure, entrepreneurship, employee ownership, purpose, profit, and why building a business that matters may be one of the best growth strategies of all. Dal, welcome to the show. Thanks for taking the time to come on. I appreciate it. Different studio tonight. I apologize. We had a little trouble at the in the main studio. Not sure why I couldn't get it hooked in. So I apologize for the problems.
No apologies. And actually, problem solving is one of the things we all face with. And what you got to remember is, what is the problem? I mean, quick story. I took over a farm and I'm selling off the doors. And so the woman I said, hey, you want the hinges? And she said, sure. So I start to take off the hinges and I'm taking and I get to the bottom and I can't take off the last screw. And I'm trying everything. And then I realized I'm trying to take the door off, not hinges. And I took the other hinge off and gave her the door. So, I mean, basically, and also let me say I'm pleased to be here. A lot of people want me on their show, but I like what Phil is doing. And so here I am. One thing I want to tell you, I got into Harvard because I was a failure. I wondered, why did you accept me? I wasn't the top in my class. I went to Providence College, and they said, you were one of the first people we picked. We looked at your resume, which was all my business failures up to that moment. We felt, here's a guy we could help. But, this is going to be a random conversation because there's a lot of ways of looking at what you guys out there are doing, guys and girls. And so, I wanted to be able to take you through what I did to finally make it work. The first thing I did was to actually concentrate on one thing and not try to make $1 million overnight.
Right.
I did that with the tweezer thing. I mean, it was remarkable. There it is. So what happened with tweezers, and the funny story about tweezers is, how did I get into the tweezer business? And I had a backside full of splinters from a amorous relationship I had in Venice Beach, California. And I bent down, I'm looking into a mirror, trying to take these tweezers out of my butt. No luck. And I thought, gee, I wish I had a needlepoint tweezer. Well, figured I'd go get one at the drugstore. We don't have needlepoint tweezers. We have tweezers, we have needles. Go to the hardware store. They had pointed tweezers, but not anything that could work. So I went back to Sharon, and she took out 32 splinters from my butt. Now, I had failed at a lot of things at that moment in my life. I had an ice cream parlor in Venice Beach, California that was working, but then it wasn't working. And I finally gave up. I'm 32 years old, $150,000 in debt, and I go home. And I go live with my mother and my sister. And I go off, I borrow my sister's bike, I go off to the adjoining community to find a job, and I found this electronics company. And when they looked at my resume and they saw I went to the Harvard Business School, they said, are you a fugitive? We don't care. But you would take a minimum wage job. Well, so at that company, I saw the women who were handling capacitors and diodes that had needle-pointed tweezers.
Yeah.
Whoa. So Where'd you get them? And I got them and I packaged them as a splinter tweezer and put them in the local hardware store. And, he was my friend, so he sold some, but they weren't going to support me. But my brother's friend, who was a manicure, she said, "Hey, can you get me not a needle pointed tweezer, get me a pointed tweezer, and I'll I'll appreciate it." So I got her some. She said, "No, give me several." And then the next week she wanted more. I said, "What are you doing with these tweezers?" She said, "I'm selling them to my customers. They're great eyebrow tweezers." So that was the beginning. Now I put my name. I sourced. By the way, you have a good product, and now you're going to have to source it. So you keep going back, and I went all the way back to Italy to find the tweezers that I found from in Switzerland. And Dal Lamagna, you saying Ron, it sounds good. I'll put that on the tweezers. Well, I'm going around selling tweezers now on Saturday because I'm still working at beauty salons, and then I'm making my second rounds, and the woman yells, "Hey, the Tweezerman is here!" So, whoa! I think I changed the name of my company, which I did on the spot. My classmates from Harvard said, "You can't do that. You got to call it something like cool, like Zwilling or Henkel, some German, Swiss." I said, "No, I'll stick with the Tweezerman." So the thing I want to start with is to tell everyone, look, make sure that what you are doing is what you want. Don't fear success, fear failure, because when you succeed, that's your life. I took over a restaurant and I was succeeding. And the more I succeeded, the worse it was. The cook doesn't show up. I now am a cook. I mean, on and on. I mean, so what I suggest you do is start with what you want. Do you want to work with other people? Do you want to live in a certain place? Do you want to have partners? What is it that you want before you jump into something? So when you succeed, you'll be happy. So that's my starting.
Did you do the restaurant before Tweezerman or after Tweezerman?
I did the restaurant before I don't remember. Sheesh. I did it before Tweezerman because I was still in college when I did the restaurant. It was called the Orson Welles. So a friend of mine, Larry Jackson, set that all up. So now, when finally I make all these mistakes, now I'm 32, I'm $150,000 in debt. Yes, I have a degree from Harvard, but I'm not going to go get a job. It'll take me 10 years to pay off my debt. So I'm definitely going to be an entrepreneur. And and the tweezer thing was working. So the question is now, how do I take it? How do I develop it?
Yeah.
Well, you need money. My first advice to you out there is don't raise money from people if you don't have to, because if you really believe in your product, you don't want to give it away at a low price to investors.
Well, that's a good point because entrepreneurs talk about raising capital all the time. And the one thing that we always caution people on is A, don't raise capital when you need it because then you're desperate and you make a bad decision, but always raise capital from people that are going to help move the business forward. Because
Exactly.
there's money out there, but then there's good money and bad money.
Yeah, and also again, don't raise money out of the box if you can avoid it. I use credit cards. Back then, we got credit cards in the mail, so I put every
Yeah.
credit card. Then I got another credit card in the mail. I worked it up to like 35 credit cards. I was using the credit card I got from the mail last week to pay off all the other credit cards, so I never missed a payment. My dad said, "Don't ever miss a credit card payment," which is also great advice.
Yeah.
So there you are. I mean, in terms of financing, then the next thing I did was I issued convertible debt to people. I didn't sell them stock yet. They lent me money, and I said, "Look, you can convert it to stock in 2 years." And I set up a price what it would be worth in 2 years. I said I projected out the way things are growing. The company would be worth $2 million in 2 years, and that's the way I'll figure it out. So anyway, that's my point on raising money. And other things, another thing that when I wanted to tell everybody is that, first of all, there's a whole thing about not lying. Definitely, my mother used to say, tell the truth is easier to remember. So I just made it a religion not to lie. I mean, really to an insane point where I'm on the line in the supermarket and the woman says, "Do you have change?" And I have change, but I don't want to give it to her. So I go, "I have it, but I don't want to give it to you." I remember Yvonne, who worked with me. She was my assistant. She said, "This guy wants to talk to you. What should I tell him? Should I tell him you're not here?" "No, tell him I don't want to talk to him."
Well, that's it's a good point because we I coach a lot of entrepreneurs, young guys, and when they go into investor meetings, there's always this tendency of being very rosy with your projections, very rosy with where you think the business is going to go. And I always coach people to go in there and just tell the truth. Tell them what you honestly believe, because
Well,
they're going to
it-
find out anyway, and they're going to know it anyway.
right. Period. Another thing that we did is that when I owed my suppliers money, I would tell them, "Hey, I can't pay you, but what I will do, since you're lending me money in effect, I'll pay you interest on whatever I owe you." They love that, and my supply, the way you operate a business when we talk about socially responsible capitalism, which is the thing, the B corporation thing that we all got into, Ben and Jerry's and Stonyfield Farm Yogurt, Ben Cohen and Gary Hirschfield. We all, we were the founders of that B corporation movement. It's that we just it was about responsible capitalism. So let's make one point here is that don't spend money on things that you can get used. I mean, I did that. I never bought anything new. And on Facebook Marketplace now you can buy practically anything.
Yeah.
So, and another story about, again, telling the truth and also raising money. There came a point where I had $185,000 in credit card debt, and my bank at the time was, I think it was Bank America. My bank, they weren't going to lend me money because I wasn't in business long enough, and Tweezerman had these events where we would go do a convention and we'd sell a lot of stuff for cash, and then we'd come home and I'm on the subway with $15,000 in cash in my pocket, hoping I don't get mugged, and I deposited the cash. And it was funny. The bank says to me at some point, we're ready to give you money. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take out all your credit cards. Give me all your credit cards, because I'm paying 18% interest on the credit cards.
Yeah,
The bank
yeah.
Give me 8. We took all my credit cards, they tore them up. And I said, why are you doing this? I mean, why now? Because we trust you. I said, you trust me? What makes you trust me? He said, because you deposited cash into a business that never has cash. You're not hiding cash. It's funny. And another vest that Steve Tuckman said to me when he asked me, what about the cash? I said, what cash? He says, well, what do you do with the cash? I says, I put it in the bank. He said, okay, I am going to invest in you because hiding cash. So
So I have a question from a viewer. Said you left Harvard Business School in 1971 and you had several business failures before Tweezerman. What did those early failures teach you that business school could not?
Oh, interesting. Well, first of all, I'll tell you, Cupid Computer was one of my early businesses. 1967, I was one of the first people to do computerized dating. We didn't even have credit cards back then, and there was no internet. What I did was I talked the local radio station into promoting it. We had a big dance at the Sheraton Biltmore, and then Peter Gavush, my physics teacher, ran the computer analysis, and we matched people and blah, blah, blah. And that was a big success, except I blew it because I spent all my money on marketing. I couldn't do the next thing, and I couldn't take it forward. And so that's when, by the way, the idea of budgeting comes in. You really need to budget yourself. The way I set it up was I paid 50% for my product. I paid 20% for marketing and sales. I paid 20% for operations, and 10% was for profit. I was very disciplined about that. Well, what could you do with if you're only doing $100,000 in business? Like in the beginning, you don't have much money for marketing and sales, so you use it to do brochures or whatever. But when we got to the point where we were doing 20 million, I could afford to buy billboards with it, and we did that. So I want to back off and talk about employees. I love my employees. By the way, I want to say I made them my partners right from the beginning. Because of them, I didn't have to work really. I mean, it got to the point where I went off and ran for Congress. I went off to school. It was like my employees were running the company. In fact, they liked it when I went because they could catch up to me. So they got health care. I was one of the originators of a living wage back in New York. Yeah, this is way back. And also, taking care of them to the nth degree. I remember one day, I have another company I was involved with called Icestone, which is my current thing that I'm doing. It's we make countertops out of recycled glass and cement. Well, one of my employees, I was coming into a back door, and he was really in a bad mood. I said, Marcel, what's wrong? He says, I have a toothache. I said, you got a toothache? Yeah. I took him to my dentist. He and I got on the train and we went to my dentist and took care of his toothache. I mean, it's clear to my employees that I care about them more than anything else. I do. I mean, so, and that's why the way I did it with the profits. Well, how did I figure that out? Well, I take everybody's salary, how much money they've made since they've been with me, and that's one big number. And then I take the amount each person has of that total, and that's the percentage of the profits that we're distributing every year to the employees. And it was also the way we distributed the final win to the employees, which turned out to be 12 million plus several million because we got the company to pay them all a signing bonus. It was a great day for employees and great day for me. One guy, the guy who cleaned the hallways, the chandler said, "Hey," he goes, "I don't want to lose my job." I go, "We gave him a year's salary. I mean, that's how much his thing worked out to be." Well, Chandler, you're not losing your job. This is your share of our success. You're going to keep your job. So then, yeah, kind of. I think the point about the employees, I think everybody has now, and I want to talk about disciplining yourself. A business is an equilateral triangle. One side is your product, and you have to make your product. The other side is marketing and sales, and the third side is you run the business. You need to make sure that you're doing that all the time. What I did was the first 4 months of the year, I was a salesperson. I did trade shows. I went out. Then the middle 4 months of the year, I was off finding products. I go to France and find different products. And the last 4 months of the year, I do the computer work and whatever. And then when I started to grow, I put a person in each of those roles. So I had three people running the company with me at the top. Also, I want to say, when you set up relationships in the company, always have a number of people who are doing things so you can always get a vote. I advise people, if you want a partner, and I don't recommend it, but if you want a partner, get two, because you don't want to be stuck arguing with one person. You'll always make a decision. I invested in a company where that was a problem. The two partners didn't talk to each other for a year, and us investors didn't even know that was the situation. So that's the so the three sides of the triangle is a way of discipline. This is all in my book, which I call "Failing to Get Ahead," raising eyebrows. All this stuff, all these things, which each of the businesses I did, which are detailed in the book, these points are made.
What's the name of the book? Say it
It's
again.
Raising Eyebrows is the name. RaisingEyebrows.com. It's easy to remember. That's where you can get the book. The another question people come up and ask me all the time about trademarks and patents. Well, I didn't patent the tweezer that I made, and it turns out I could have. I didn't realize. How can you patent a tweezer? Well, it was a special thing that we did with our tweezer that didn't cut the hair, and we never told anybody what it was, which was good because nobody could figure out how we did it. I won't even tell you now because Tweezerman is a very successful company. They're making 4 million tweezers a year now. But the trademarks and patents, the way you trademark something, just put a TM next to it. I have this new venture called Fact Flow, which is a deal that helps you find the truth. And we just put a TM next to Fact Flow, and then later on you register it when you're actually in business. But declaring it's a trademark, you do it at TM. There's a story I wanted to tell you about Seprolash. Seprolash was invented by this woman, Penny, and it separated your eyelashes evenly and took out mascara. So I heard about her when I was in California and found her and said, "Hey, I could sell this thing nationally for you." Well, she was doing very well in California. I guaranteed that she would make the same amount of money she was making and more, and she went for it, and I took over national sales. And this thing went on, and she got a 5% royalty, which was terrific, and that's the way you do it. And I had the exclusive for the product. So she had developed an eyelash curler, and the eyelash curler took years to develop, and finally she has it all figured out. She gets the patent, and she says to me, "Oh, I'm going to go with another company to distribute it." She gave it to a great big mass distributor of products. They bought. I said, "Why are you doing this?" Well, they're going to buy 10,000 of them. Well, what they did, they copied her. They copied it, knocked her off, and then she's crying. So, but she had a patent. So I hired the biggest patent attorneys in Kenyon and Kenyon, and we went after the company, and we got them to take the patent. She was now my partner in that deal because I fronted all the money. So the other thing you want to do is you want to make sure that if a factory is making your product, if that's what it is you're doing, you have to have an agreement with them that they won't sell your product to anybody else.
Yeah.
And I ended up with 7, 8, 9 different factories making tweezers, and they all agreed to it, and it worked. So I, I there's one thing that I want to tell everybody about the end game. When you're ready to sell your company, represent yourself. Don't hire brokers. And the reason you don't want to do that is because the minute you hire a broker, then they have skin in the game, and then it's hard to negotiate. I with Tweezerman, when I sold Tweezerman, it was a big negotiation, and there were times when I was willing to walk, and had I had somebody there tell me, no, you can't walk, didn't happen, and we got everything we wanted, and we're very happy. By the way, I picked a great company to take over Tweezerman. It was a company, a German company called Zwilling. It's like the Rockefellers of Germany. They bought the company, and they did not destroy the product. The biggest thing that I'm sad about in life is I love cookies. I love Tape cookies, famous Amos cookies, and these companies buy these cookies, and they destroy them. They spend more money in the packaging. The cookie doesn't taste good anymore. They destroy the cookie. But Zwilling did not destroy the Tweezerman tweezer.
Yeah, I mean, the website looks still great, Tweezerman. But we have another question. It says, how did employee ownership change the culture inside the company?
Well, first of all, I think everybody felt like I felt about this whole thing, that it was something that they were doing that was succeeding, and they would succeed with it. Remember, we budgeted salaries. So we took a percentage of all the money we were making, and we distributed it in raises to everybody. And and they were proud of what they were doing, and they were involved. I just when I was a kid, I used to think, wow, I can't wait until as the world gets more and more productive, people won't have to work 5 days a week. They'll work 4 days a week, and then eventually 3 days a week, and they'll make the same salary. That's not what happened. What happened is a few people made obscene amounts of money, and the employees ended up having to have the husband and wife would both have to work just to keep up with things. This is the real tragedy of America right now. And I would like to see, everybody's afraid of AI and it's going to kill jobs. I'm calling for these companies to declare a 4-day work week with 5 days of pay, so the employees are sharing in the productivity gains that we're going to get from AI now. And will companies do that? I think companies like Ben and Jerry's will. I mean, Stonyfield. There are companies out there, Patagonia, that will do something like this. Anyway, that's my two
Well, I
cents.
don't think AI, I think AI has become an excuse to reduce headcount. I mean, the reality is that we use AI every day in our company, and we have for the last 7 years. And, we do all kinds of things with it, but has it reduced my headcount? No. It's made things more efficient. It's made things better in a lot of cases. We can do more. We can do things faster, but I don't see a day when I still don't need people. And I think that when people read in the paper these companies that say, "Oh, we're reducing headcount because of AI," they're just they're just reducing headcount. They're not
Right, and that's their excuse.
excuse. So, I don't think AI is a system that you put into a business, no different than marketing, no different than finance, no different than operations. It is a system, and you build agents with it, you build workflows with it, so it can do mundane tasks that you don't want to pay somebody to do anyway. So, but it's not going to replace I don't. You still need people to make the decisions. You still need people to set up the guardrails. You still need people to manage AI. AI is not self-managed, as much as we'd like to think it is. It is not.
Yeah. But the bottom line point here is that without employees, you have nothing. And make them your partners, and just engage them and give them a living wage and let them have a good life.
Well, yeah. So
This,
somebody sent a follow-up question. Said, did giving employees ownership make the business stronger, more profitable, or easier to lead?
all of the above. The I don't. I was never into it for the money. I just wanted to make a living wage. In fact, when I was at Providence, I wanted to be a physicist. My dream was to develop the anti-bomb, the bomb that goes off when the atom bomb goes off and it neutralizes. And everything has the up. That was my dream as a physicist. But I realized that I didn't want to be a starving physicist, and that's when I started trying to make $1 million so I could retire and be a physicist. Well, I'm not going to be a physicist. That story has passed. But what happens is I go away, the company chugs along and succeeds and does better, and then I come back and I open up another frontier. I go off to Korea and set up distribution there. I do the things to grow the business while the employees run the business.
Well, yeah, I mean, that brings up a good point because that's truly the way that you scale a business.
Yeah,
And it's truly the way that a CEO needs to act. And in order to get there, you've obviously set up systems and processes and metrics and things to hold people accountable because you just can't walk away and say you run the business.
no,
How do they know what to do? You must have trained them. You must have given them processes and systems.
and like I said before, people were in charge of things, and there was no one person who was in charge of anything really. They had partners that they had to work with, and that system held up. So we had a story with our marketing director who, first of all, let me back up a little. We sold to professional beauty stores. We sold to Sally Beauty Supply, which is a big chain of beauty stores.
Used to be.
Yeah, and then when we never sold the chain drugstores. First of all, in the beginning, we didn't sell them because we didn't want to have one customer who took up all our business. We ended up with Tweezerman with like 3,000 or 4,000 separate places where you could buy Tweezerman. All the little independent drugstores and all the beauty salons. So, but when the day came that we were ready to move into, the first one we were ready to move into was CVS, there's a funny story about that. The way we did it is we had different packaging. Same name. We didn't change the name. We didn't do like what other companies do. I'm involved with EO Naturals, and they have a different name for their product in the drugstores. So we had three different kinds of packaging. We had the small store Tweezerman packaging. We had the limited packaging for the chain stores, and then we had deluxe packaging for the the apartment stores. Well, our marketing director, you can understand why he would say that. The look should be the same anywhere, and he changed the packaging. And then all of a sudden now we get a call from Sally Beauty Supply saying we're not going to sell your product anymore because it's the same product that's being sold in the CVS down the block. That was a crisis, and we moved on that quickly. We went to but it got exasperated when CVS announced they were going to discount the product 30%, which was another. You're not allowed to do that. And I thought, gee, I'm not allowed to do price control. And I called my roommate at Harvard, Clark McFadden, who is a lawyer and knows everything about all those things. And he said, well, you can get an agreement that everybody cannot discount your product more than 10%.
Yeah.
They want to distribute your product. Oh, okay. So I then announced to the entire universe of Tweezerman, this is a crisis I come back from school for to solve. I sent out a message to everyone saying, hey, you're not allowed to, if you do, we will not supply you. So that worked. Sally Beauty Supply said, thank you. We're not dropping the line. CVS said, thank you. We were only doing it because Walgreens was going to do it. And that was it. And they don't want to discount the product because one of the reasons they love us is because they make a full 50% gross margin on the product. They don't have to work on the 20% margin.
Yeah. Yeah. How long did you own Tweezerman? When did you found it?
I founded it in 1980. I sold it in 24, 23, 20, 20, 25 years. Wow. And that was Tweezerman has been, I hear they say they're in business for 40 years. Holy smokes. I'm 80 now, so, wow. When I was 32, I was $150,000 in debt. Now I'm 80 and, I lost money on things. I invested in a lot of things. I lose money. I don't know why I invested. I got involved in politics, but I gave up on that. That was just frustrating and a useless pursuit. The It seems that the business people have taken over our government, but at the end of the day, the business people need to remember, again, their employees and their customers are the ones who make them what they are, and hopefully, we had this whole philosophy that we took care of our customers, obviously first, our suppliers, our community. We were very involved in the community. Tweezerman, we funded things in the community like home for women, teenagers who have babies, that kind of stuff, and we donated 5% of our profits to those kinds of activities. And the employees, were involved in that, and they felt very good about that, and I don't blame them.
Yeah. So when you sold Tweezerman in 2004 or 2005, how did you know it was the right time?
Well, I was very active back then trying to stop the Iraq War. In fact, talk about problem solving, and I thought the way to solve the problem is I went over there and was acting like a citizen diplomat. I organized a group of people who were, the bad guys. I organized groups of those to declare a ceasefire. They would declare a ceasefire for a couple of weeks. I worked with a member of the Iraq Parliament, and I don't know, what was the question?
It's when you sold Tweezerman, how did you know it was the right time?
Oh, okay. So I'm over there, I'm active, and I'm thinking at some point I had a meeting with General Petraeus, and I had the member of the Iraq Parliament with me, and he said, look, first of all, this is not a war. Happily, because if it were a war, I would be arrested for trying to be a citizen diplomat. You're not allowed to do that. So it wasn't a war according to them, even though it was. But he said, but President Bush's makes the decision. I don't make the decision. And then I realized, gee, I'm doing all this activism. Maybe they're going to try to take me out by calling Sally Beauty Supply, which is owned by Republicans, or calling CVS. CVS wasn't, I think Walgreens was, and tell them to stop buying my products. So I thought, so that was kind of a little wake up call for me. The the other, so I
So was
felt,
that the driver for you selling the business?
yeah, it was because I got to the point where I felt it was unfair to my employees for me to risk the company with my political activism. I mean, that I remember that clearly. I go, well, gee, the employees, this is not fair for them. We should try to sell the company, which we went out and did.
But so you built the company over about 25 years. Was selling the company emotionally difficult?
No, I was kind of ready to do it, and I was involved with John Kerry back then. If he had won, I would have been secretary. I would have been head of the SBA, and I thought he was going to win. And I sold the company the day of the election, and I took off to Boston, and Kerry loses. I can't believe he lost. Well, I can believe he lost. I mean, when he came out on stage with a shotgun to brag how he
Yeah,
shoots.
let's stay off the politics.
Yeah, right. Okay.
What um, what did you understand about your customer that your competitors missed?
Oh, I thought, I think what I understood is that they weren't only interested in the lowest price product they could get. They wanted quality and they wanted a gross margin, period. And I was ignored for years. People, the big guys, and then finally when they woke up and they saw, oh my God, this guy's selling a $20 tweezer. Our tweezers sell for $3.50. then they started to try to come at us, but it was too late for them. We were too entrenched. The brand was too strong.
Yeah, I mean, quality. If people are going to spend money, right? They're going to want to buy quality. I mean, there's a $3.99 tweezer and there's a $20 tweezer. The $20 tweezer you could have for 10 years. The $3.99 tweezer you could have for a month.
Yeah, and lose it and not care. So
Yeah. So, uh, okay, here's a good question. What would you say to a founder who says, I cannot afford to give away equity to my employees?
uh, well, duh. I mean, give them 10%. You can't afford to give them 10%. I mean, it's just it's a
I think,
no-brainer.
I think it's about you can't afford not to. I mean, if you
Yeah,
have vested employees, like turnover
yeah,
costs money.
yeah. It's kind of. I mean, we were so. We when you came to work for Tweezerman, we figured it out. We had a woman who we had changed the job 4 times to finally find something that she could do. And then when she finally found out what she could do, she quit. But we didn't fire her. She quit. So I um, I don't know if you're interested in the project I'm working on now.
What are you working on?
It's called Fact Flow, which is it's not political. It's not an app. It's not AI. It's basically a browser extension that you get, and when you're watching something, it tells you whether the facts that you're seeing are true or false. And where we get the facts are from all the fact collectors. There's like 86 places, the Department of Energy, it goes on and on, all the health department, all these places where facts are collected. And we develop a program where we go in, and what makes it unusual for what we're doing is that it happens in real time. So you see it in the moment. Like if there's someone talking on TV and starting saying facts, yeah, the networks will check the facts, but by the time they come up with the answer, it's already 10 minutes later, nobody cares. This happens in real time. So it's also good, and the reasons, one of the reasons I don't need to do a business to make money. This is not a money making business for me. It's like, for instance, the kids don't know what's what. They're on their phones. If we could get something on their phone where they could see, no, this is not a true fact. This is. That would be helpful. It would be helpful for the teachers. Blah blah blah.
You have your minimum viable product built yet?
Yeah, yeah, we are expecting to be live uh, October 1st.
Have you beta tested it?
We are no, we're beta testing it on September 1st. This is code. Ironically, our coders are in Pakistan and of all places Ukraine. I mean, I say to the Ukraine guys, "Wow, how do you do this?" I mean, well, we're in our basement. That's how we do it. It's really amazing.
Well, I mean, a lot of people use offshore. I'm assuming you have partners in this, but
Yeah,
people,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, so, right. So at the end of the day, MS or CNN or even Fox News, they would subscribe to this so that they could put it up when there's debates or whatever, so that facts are checked in real time. So
so is it a browser extension or is it something that goes on their
it,
platform?
it's a browser extension, and if somebody is if it's a network is going to use it, well, then it would go on that. It would be a thing they buy for their platform. So I'm doing that one, and then we're still doing Ice Stone, which is countertops made out of recycled glass and cement. And the problem that we had with that company, which is a beautiful company, a beautiful product, there's no toxins in the product, and we're recycling glass. It's recycled glass and cement and pigments. Is that we can never really figure out how to make it. So we would sell 10 and we would only make 6 or 7 that we could ship. And the company never made money, but it's still alive. And we closed the factory, and now we have our competitor, one of our competitors, the competitor, who's making the product for us. So we're still doing that. People who care about the environment and they care about recycling and beautiful countertops, that's the thing that they're looking at.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. um, I think the fact finding extension is a unique idea if you can get it to work. The problem, the way I see it, The problem that you'll have is getting it through, getting it approved on uh, Google's network, because that's how you get it on the browser extension. You can probably get it on DuckDuckGo, but Google's the
YouTube.
browser.
Yeah. So yeah, that'll be part of the attempt. We the other issue, of course, is that people will sue us because if we tell them what they said is not a true fact, they might sue us. So we have to deal with that, and I have to get kind of insurance. I'm lining all that up too. There are 400 last count places that are trying to figure this out. I mean, truth telling. How do you deal with this? How do you?
Well, Steve Ballmer has been working on it too. From Microsoft, he's a multi-billionaire.
Right, right. And
Yeah,
yeah, so and yeah, it is a crisis for our times. I mean, I don't care who you are politically. You want to know the truth, and it would be nice to have a reliable source that's non-political telling you what it is.
yeah, um, yeah. Let's get back to. There's a brand building question. It says a lot of founders underestimate the power of product quality. How important was quality control to Tweezerman's growth?
Well, it was everything, and also brand building was everything. For instance, I was speaking about it before, when we started to go into different markets, because we started in the professional market, when we started to go into retail, we didn't change the name in retail. We didn't make up a different name for it. We kept the Tweezerman name and we just changed the packaging. So, yeah, the brand is very important and something. I was at a wedding, the wedding of my friend Larry Jackson and I think his wife or one of the guests. When she met me as a Tweezerman, she said we aim to tweeze, and she gave me the copyright. So that was it. We aim to Tweezerman. Big. I did it in terms of things you could do. Allure magazine was just coming out, and I knew the publisher's son, so and he said, "Why don't you advertise in Allure?" I said, "Okay, I'll do that." But and I had a budget then. This is the point where I had the money to spend. I said, if you put me on the masthead, which is the third page of the magazine, two-thirds is the masthead, the publisher and all that, and then one-third is the Tweezerman ad. I'll take that ad for a year. And all we did was put a big red tweezer up. We aim to tweeze, period. Wow, did that work?
Yeah,
And not only did it work, everybody saw it because when you open the magazine, it's the first thing you see.
yeah.
So, that's how you build. When I had the bill, put a billboard up in another funny story. Yvonne, who was in charge of marketing, she said, "Hey, the guy who I called 2 years ago, because there was a billboard that you went under when you went to LaGuardia Airport, and I wanted that billboard because anybody who's coming to New York in the business in the beauty business are going to LaGuardia, they see the billboard. So we got the billboard, and we put up, we aim to tweeze, big tweezer, period. Now, a month, and I had signed for a year for that billboard, and it was like $13,000 a month. So a month later, the Department of Traffic puts a sign in front of my billboard.
Yeah.
I call the billboard guy, go, "Hey, there's no way I'm paying you for a year for this billboard, which you can't see because if you're going 50 miles an hour, you don't even see it because you go." He said, "Don't worry. What I'll do is I'll move you around the city." I go, "What do you mean move me around the city?" I go, "I don't want to." No, he said, "No. What happens is people cancel. I have a month empty. I don't want it to be empty. I'll put you at the entrance to the Midtown Tunnel, the exit of Midtown Tunnel, the West Side Highway." So my billboard was moving all around the city, which was huge. And this is what triggered the whole sale of the company, because the CEO of Revlon was seeing my billboard everywhere. And he says to Revlon was the biggest company for beauty tools. I mean,
Yeah.
they were it. And this guy who was running the company, he says to the woman who's in charge of the manicure stuff and the tweezers and all that, he says, "Who is Tweezerman?" And she says, the best eyebrow tweezer in the world. That's what she says to our boss. You mean ours isn't? And she said, she laughs. Oh, Frank, give me a break.
That's
so
funny.
they, so they came after us. There's another funny story with, the women knew who Tweezerman was, the men didn't.
Yeah.
So when we got into, first of all, when you're going to go into, I think it was Walgreens, yeah. When you're going to go into a company like Walgreens, you got to have inventory. You don't just go to. So I built up, you know, there's 1,000 stores. You know, they're going to take six tweezers for the stores and six tweezers. You know, that's 12,000 tweezers. You know, you got to have them. So once I had enough tweezers, and I had the whole line, we go and we say to Walgreens, "We're ready to sell you." And so there's the meeting, and we had 15 items. One thing we learned was you don't put your product one tweezer in an aisle in a drugstore and think you're going to sell anyone. You got to have a space.
Right.
They walk up to it. So I learned that with I forget what store it was that we did that to, but anyway,
But you had more items than just tweezers.
yeah, yeah, and they were all unique items. Nail clippers, skincare tools, and we had a range of products. So we had 15 products that we were ready to sell them. We had enough inventory, and her boss was Frank. He was sitting there with me and her, and he goes, "Well, I'm only interested in the tweezers that you have and a couple of other items." I said, "Well, I'm not going to sell you one or two items. Either you take all 15 or there's no deal." And he looks at me and he goes back. He goes, "You're going to walk away from selling what was 1,000 times 12,000 tweezers?" And at $10 a piece, which is what they were, because they sold for 20. And I go, "Yes, because I know what'll happen. No one will buy them because no one will find them in your store." And then Nancy, the woman who was in charge of that department, she says, "Frank, just give it up. Take
Yeah.
the line." And they did, happily for them and happily for us.
We got to wrap it up. We're just about out of time. Any parting words? Any last minute thoughts? Any last minute beats of advice? People, say it again. Where people can find your book?
Well, raisingeyebrows.com. And here's my advice to you: no regrets. I mean, just think about it. Are you happy where you are? And everything you've ever done got you to where you are today. I have no regrets. There's nothing I did because I'm very happy right now where I am. So just philosophical advice. Chill out if you're worried about anything.
And and so people can find the book. Um, say it again.
Raisingeyebrows.com.
And then they can find you if they want to look more about you. You have your own website.
Well, raisingeyebrows.com will take you to my website, dallamagna.com. I mean, there's like, This American Life did a piece on me when I was in Iraq. Whatever they call that thing. It's like a 3-minute piece of me in Iraq trying to solve the war. There's things like that up there. There's a lot of stuff up there. And certainly I'm available to anybody who wants to ask me questions. You can send me emails. Got my email, dallamagna.com. I'm happy to advise people. I'm not going to spend hours with you, but I'm going to give you advice, and it'll be succinct.
Yeah. Yeah. So we got to wrap it up. And again, what I love about your story is that you didn't just build a valuable company. You built a company around values, and proved that companies can share in the upside. And Ben and Jerry's has done it. Stonyfield Yogurt's done it. A couple of others has done it. More should do it. I'm a big proponent of having the employees share in the growth because I think it gives them a vested interest in caring about the company and not treating it just as a job, but treating it as more of a career. So, to
And
everyone watching the show, remember, growth is not just about getting bigger; it's about getting better and better for your customers, better for your employees, better for your community, better for the world. So. Until next time, next week we'll be back 6 p.m. on Tuesday, and thank you all for tuning in.
a shout out to you, Phil. I
Thank
wouldn't I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. I checked you out. You're one of the good guys.
I appreciate that.